Welcome to the Science of Hockey, the podcast where we break down the science behind ice hockey. I'm the analyst, your host, and every week we explore the data, research, and evidence that shape how we play, train, and understand the game of hockey. From biomechanics to performance psychology, we take you beyond the rink and into the research lab, giving you insights that go beyond hearsay and into what really makes the difference on the ice. Whether you're a player, a coach, a parent, or just someone passionate about the sport, we're here to bring you scientifically backed information in a language that's friendly and easy to understand. So grab your skates and let's dive into the science of hockey. Welcome to the Science of Hockey, where we decode the numbers behind the game. I'm your host, the analyst. Today, we uncover the challenges faced by elite male and female hockey players, from unequal resources to the connection between stress and injury. Don't miss this deep dive into the realities of high-stakes hockey.
All right, so get this. Today we're diving into something that might get you a little fired up.
Oh, really? What's that?
Well, imagine training, like your whole life, right, for this sport you love.
Okay, yeah, I get that.
But then you realize the playing field,
Yeah.
it's like totally uneven, not even close to fair.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I can see how that would be frustrating.
That's what a lot of female athletes are dealing with, even like at the top level.
Seriously, even at the elite level.
Yeah, it's kind of messed up. So we're looking at this study from BMC Sports Science, Medicine, and Rehabilitation.
BMC.
They looked at Swedish ice hockey leagues, comparing the men's and women's leagues.
Interesting. What kind of stuff did they look at?
All sorts of things, like training conditions, stress levels, and injuries.
Oh, wow. That's a lot to unpack.
Right. So they wanted to see what the real deal is for these athletes.
Sounds fascinating.
Okay, so they focused on the top leagues. The SHL and Hockey Allsvenskan, that's for the men.
Right. Top tier.
And then for the women, it's the SWHL.
Okay, so everybody here is like at the top of their game, the best of the best.
Exactly. But then, when they looked closer, like at the details, some major differences popped up, like huge.
Really? Like what?
Okay, get this. One of the big things was their primary occupation.
Primary occupation. So like what their main job is.
Yep. So think about it. For the men, almost all of them, like 9 out of 10, said hockey was their only job.
Yeah, that makes sense. Pro athletes, right. That's the dream.
Right. But for the women, only 1 in 4 could say the same thing.
Whoa. Seriously?
Yeah. So most of the women had to juggle jobs or studies on top of, their crazy training schedules.
Wow. That's a huge difference. That must be incredibly tough.
Right. It's not just about playing the game, It's their livelihood, their career.
Absolutely. And that must add a whole other level of stress to everything.
For sure. And it's not just the money, though. That's obviously a big part of it.
Yeah, of course.
But this study also looked at, medical support for the teams.
Okay, that's important. Making sure the players are taken care of.
Right. And guess what? Another huge difference.
Between the men and women's teams.
Yeah. Almost all the men's teams had medical staff, consistently at all the games.
Okay, that makes sense. Gotta keep those players healthy.
But for the women, less than half of their teams had that kind of support.
Are you serious?
That's
wild.
Hold on, it gets worse. Remember, we're talking ice hockey here.
Oh yeah, super high impact.
One of the most physically demanding sports out there.
Right, tons of injuries.
So how are you supposed to train and compete at your best, if you're worried about getting hurt?
Yeah, that's a great point. Without that medical support, it'd be terrifying.
Totally. And all that worry. It leads us to the next thing the study looked at.
What's that?
Stress levels.
Oh, I bet that's a big difference too.
It is. But first, how do you even measure stress in a study like this?
Well, how'd they do it?
They actually use 2 different ways. First, there's something called the Perceived Stress Scale.
Okay, what's that?
It basically asks players to think about the whole past season, how stressful was it overall?
Okay, so it's a reflection, looking back.
Yeah. And then the second way is more in the moment. It's called the single item stress question.
So how stressed are you feeling right now?
Exactly. So they get the big picture and a snapshot of how they're feeling right then and there.
Interesting approach. Makes sense, though.
So, with all these differences between the men and women, their realities are totally different.
Right, for sure.
What did they find when they compared the stress levels?
I can't wait to hear this.
Well, you probably won't be surprised. The women. They reported way higher stress levels than the men on both of those measures.
Wow. Not surprising, but still really disheartening to hear.
Right. Both groups had stress levels similar to, like, the average person.
Okay, so it's not like athletes as a whole are more stressed than everybody else.
Exactly. But the fact that the women were so much higher than the men in this specific context,
It says something, that's for sure.
it really does. It seems like all that stuff, the extra jobs, the money worries, the lack of medical support,
Right, all those factors.
they all add up to this, like extra stress for the women.
It's like they're starting from behind already, before they even step onto the ice.
That's a good way to put it. But let's not jump to conclusions just yet.
Right, right. There's more to the story, I bet.
There is. We got to see how this stress connects to something else that's super important for athletes.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's the next piece of the puzzle?
Injuries.
Ah, yeah, that makes sense.
We'll dive into that next.
It's kind of crazy how this all fits together, right?
Yeah.
Like all these pieces.
Yeah, totally. The unequal playing field we were just talking about.
The money stuff,
Hmm.
the lack of medical support.
It's a lot. No wonder the women are saying they're more stressed.
No kidding. But the study didn't stop there. They also wanted to see if this stress was connected to, like, injuries.
Oh, right. Makes sense. And we know hockey is a pretty high-risk sport for injuries.
Right.
And we already saw the women are getting less medical support. Makes you think, huh?
For sure. So what did they find? This connection between stress and injuries?
Well, they found that. There's like a link, a correlation between how stressed the players feel
Okay.
and how bad their injuries were in the previous season.
Oh, interesting. So more stress, worse injuries.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
But here's the thing that kind of threw me,
What's that?
that correlation. It was actually stronger for the men.
Wait, really? That's kind of surprising.
I thought so too. I figured with all the pressure the women are under.
Right. The extra jobs, the
Yeah.
money stuff.
Yeah, all of it.
Yeah.
I thought they'd be more likely to have, bad injuries because of stress.
So why do you think the men had that stronger link?
Well, the study kind of hints at it. You know how we were saying most of the men,
9 out of 10.
yeah, they consider hockey their main job, right?
Yeah.
Like their livelihood.
Makes sense. It's their career.
So for a lot of these guys, an injury isn't just like, oh, I got to sit out a few games.
Right.
It could mess up their whole career, like their money, how they see themselves.
Their whole future, maybe.
Exactly. That's got to be a lot of pressure.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
So maybe the men's stress levels are higher when it comes to injuries because they've got more to lose.
Could be. I mean, it makes sense when you put it that way.
Right. It just shows how complicated this whole thing is,
Mm.
Stress, injuries, the different pressures on athletes.
It's not just black and white, that's for sure.
And speaking of different pressures, can we talk about the pay gap for a sec?
Oh, yeah. That's a big one.
I mean, you mentioned it earlier, but it's just crazy how much less the women make.
It's wild. Like in the study, they talked about this survey from 2020.
Okay.
It said the average salary for a guy in the elite league, it was basically the same as a whole women's team combined.
Hold on, seriously.
Yeah, the whole team.
That's insane.
Yeah.
It's not even close. No wonder so many women need second jobs.
Right. They have to choose between, following their passion and actually making a living.
It's like a lose-lose situation almost.
Totally. And, that choice, that pressure to make ends meet, it definitely adds to their stress.
I can only imagine.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder about, like, bigger life choices.
Like what?
Like starting a family. The study mentioned this briefly, but
Okay.
it said that only one of the women they surveyed out of, like, 170 had kids.
Wow.
And for the men, it was, like, 1 in 4.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
Kind of sad, But it makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah, if you're constantly worried about money, your career feels shaky.
Right. And you don't have the support system that men have.
It makes starting a family, a whole lot harder.
It's almost like they're being told, pick one. Hockey or a family, you can't have both.
And that's a choice men don't usually have to face.
Nope. It all kind of goes back to that quote from the older study, the one from 2008.
Oh, yeah. What was it again?
Something like, ice hockey can never be more than a hobby for women.
Oof. Tough to hear that.
It is. And even though things have gotten better, since then,
Right.
this new study shows there's still a long way to go.
Yeah. True equality in hockey. We're not there yet.
Not even close.
So,
So we've got all this stuff, right? Unequal conditions, the money gap, these crazy stress levels.
right, right.
But I'm curious, how does this stress compare to, like, other athletes?
Good question.
Did the study look at that at all?
They didn't. The study was just focused on comparing men and women in hockey.
Okay.
But it definitely makes you think, how do these findings stack up against other sports?
Yeah, totally. Are pro athletes just generally more stressed? More than college athletes, maybe?
Well, even younger athletes.
Right. I mean, think about all the pressure they're under.
Definitely something worth looking into.
Yeah, maybe a future deep dive.
I'd listen to that.
Yeah.
But for now, let's stick with what we know. This study. Remember we were talking about that weird finding?
The one where stress was more linked to bad injuries in men. Yeah, and we thought it might be because hockey is, their whole career for a lot of guys.
Their bread and butter.
Right. But the authors of the study actually brought up another interesting point.
Okay, what is it?
Athlete identity.
Athlete identity. What does that even mean?
It's how much someone sees themselves as an athlete. Is it their whole identity?
Oh, okay, I get it. So someone with a strong athlete identity, they'd be devastated by an injury.
Exactly. Because it's not just about their body healing.
Right. It's who am I now?
Yeah. And the study suggested that having a strong athlete identity could actually make you more likely to have mental health problems after an injury.
Oh, wow. That makes a lot of sense.
It's harder to cope, if you've defined yourself by this sport for so long.
And suddenly you can't do it anymore.
Right. So maybe that's why men have higher stress levels with injuries.
Because they tend to have a stronger athlete identity.
Yeah, that's what the study kind of suggests.
Interesting. But this is just one study, right?
Of course.
We need more research to be sure about that link.
Totally. But what else could be going on? Why else might men and women experience this injury stress so differently?
Well, think about the pressure on men in sports.
Okay, yeah.
Society tells them they got to be tough, play through pain.
Suck it up, right?
Exactly. And that pressure to not admit you're hurt, to not ask for help.
It's got to make things worse, right?
Totally. It can make the stress even worse and even make the injury worse, too.
So it's not just about how they see themselves, but also the pressure from, society's expectations.
Exactly. It's all connected. It's not just about the individual. It's also about the culture, the gender norms, all of it.
Right. And it all adds up to this complex relationship between stress and injuries.
For sure.
Okay, so going back to the study, we keep talking about substantial and non-substantial injuries.
Right.
Can you remind me what that even means?
Sure. A substantial injury is basically one that keeps you from playing.
Okay, so it seriously affects your training and competing.
Exactly. You might have to take time off the ice to recover.
Got it. And the non-substantial ones.
They're still injuries, but they don't have as big of an impact on, your ability to play.
So they're more like nagging injuries.
Something like that.
And I'm guessing the study found a connection between how bad the injury was and the stress levels players reported.
Yep, you got it. Players with substantial injuries, they had way higher stress levels, but again, it was more obvious in the men.
So the guys with those serious injuries had way more stress than the ones who weren't injured or had those less serious injuries.
Right.
Which kind of brings us back to what we've been saying all along.
About the men having more to lose.
Yeah. Their career, their whole identity, it's all tied up in this. So an injury is a bigger deal.
Definitely. It's not just a physical setback. It's like an existential threat.
Whoa, deep.
Right. And it just shows how important it is to support athletes.
Both physically and mentally.
Exactly. Throughout their whole careers, not just when they're injured.
It's a good reminder that we're not just talking about numbers here. No, we're talking about real people with real feelings and real lives.
It's easy to forget that sometimes.
It is. So we've been talking about all this stuff, all these findings.
Right.
It's been eye-opening,
Totally.
But I think the big question is, what does this all mean for our listener?
Good point. Why should they care about all this?
Exactly.
Well, I think this goes beyond just hockey. It's about, realizing that these barriers and biases, they exist everywhere, not just in sports. It's about understanding that inequality isn't just some random thing that happens.
It's created.
Yes, it's created and it keeps going, often without us even realizing it, through our actions, our choices.
So, the listener has a responsibility to be aware of this stuff, right?
Absolutely, and to challenge it. It's not enough to just listen and be like, oh, that's interesting.
Right, we got to do something about it.
Exactly. Knowledge is only powerful if you actually use it.
So what can our listener do, even if they're not, involved in pro sports?
Well, they can be informed fans.
Okay.
Support women's sports. Go to games, buy merch,
Show up, put your money where your mouth is.
Exactly. And speak up when you see sexism, inequality, challenge that stuff.
Don't be afraid to say something.
Right? We can all hold those in power accountable. Leagues, teams, organizations.
They need to do better. Create a fairer system for everyone.
100%. It's about realizing we all have a role to play here.
Not just the athletes, but the fans, too.
Yep. It's about recognizing our own biases, challenging what we think we know, and actively trying to make things better.
So it's not about pointing fingers or blaming people.
No.
It's about making a real effort to create a world where everyone can succeed, regardless of gender.
Exactly. And that's what this conversation is all about.
Yeah. This has been a great conversation. It needs to keep going, though.
For sure.
Both in the world of sports and beyond. But for now, we're going to wrap up this deep dive with a final thought.
Okay, I like that. Something to think about.
Yeah, something to spark some more reflection, maybe inspire some action. So we've talked about a lot today.
Yeah, we have.
About, how unequal things are in hockey, how stress and injuries, all that.
And how it's not really just about hockey. It's about, bigger issues.
Yeah, exactly.
Like how society works, all that.
Right. We've talked about being aware of this stuff, using our voices, making choices.
To push for change.
Yeah. But I think there's like another layer here,
Yeah, there is.
Something for our listener to really think about as we wrap things up.
What do you think? What should they be chewing on?
Well, we've talked about seeing these inequalities.
Right.
But it's not enough to just see them,
No, you gotta do something, right?
Exactly. So here's the question for our listener.
Okay, I like this.
Think about your own relationship with sports. Okay.
Okay, my own relationship.
How do you engage with men's and women's sports? Are they different for you?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Do you watch both with the same, enthusiasm? Do you support both equally? Like with your money, buying merch, all that.
Oh, that's a good point.
And do you call out people when they make, those dismissive comments or jokes about women's sports?
Like those dumb stereotypes.
Yeah. It's easy to get caught up in, the excitement of the game.
The fun of it.
Totally. But we got to step back sometimes, look at the bigger picture, right?
Yeah, the systems that make those games happen.
Yeah. Are we really supporting all athletes equally?
Or are we just letting these inequalities continue by, not doing anything?
Yeah. These are tough questions, I know.
They are. They make you think.
But they're important. If we want to create a world where it's your talent that matters.
Right.
Not your gender.
Not whether you're a man or a woman.
Exactly.
Oh.
It's about realizing that all our choices, even the small ones,
they matter.
They make a difference.
Yeah, they add up.
So the next time you're watching a game, any game, think about who you're cheering for, what message you're sending.
Yeah.
And how you can make a change.
With your actions, your words.
Totally.
Yeah.
Because making things fairer, it takes all of us.
It's a team effort, right?
It really is. It starts with, each of us being aware.
Right.
But then it has to turn into, action, all of us working together.
Right, a collective effort.
So that's where we're going to leave it today.
Yeah, this has been a great deep dive.
It really has. We hope this got you thinking, and sparked some new ideas.
And that you'll, go out there and do something.
Exactly. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
Good stuff.
Thanks for tuning in to The Science of Hockey. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to share it with your friends, teammates, or anyone who loves hockey as much as you do. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment to let us know what you liked, what you'd like to hear next, or any questions you have. Your feedback helps us make the show even better. Until next time, keep your skates sharp, your mind open, and keep chasing the science behind the game.